The
Hi,
interview.
everybody.
Hi, everybody.
This is Cellophase, your hostess of Slanesh. And you may notice up in that corner over there is somebody who is a far better AOS player than I am, who's going to be talking about what being that level of player actually does for you, such as a golden ticket to the World Championships of Warhammer.
So I just got back from the World Championships of Warhammer in Atlanta. I was there for like 5.5 days of super intense competition with some amazing people and competing against the best players in the whole world. And it was an amazing experience. I'm excited to talk about it and to hopefully, teach some cool things to the audience and, illuminate how it is to be at that level and what these events are like. So it's gonna be fun, I think.
Absolutely. The first thing that I wanted to touch on, which is something that Coach actually touched upon a little bit when I had the pleasure of interviewing him or interviewing with him rather, he was the interviewer for LVO, was what makes the World Championships of Warhammer, aside from the obvious, like, it is top tier players in their areas attending, but what makes it different from like your standard GT? How is the energy different from if you just go to, say, your local two-dayer?
I think that's a really good question, actually. So the energy at the World Championships, it can be a little bit varied. Like the difference between last year and this year was definitely pretty stark, but I would say that the energy is even more positive than your general GT energy. I think everyone there is at a very high level. They're all very like competent. Everyone knows what they're doing, and everyone also knows that everyone knows what they're doing as well. So like you don't really have any issues with cheating pretty much at all. People aren't even worried about it. People aren't like even watching it like a hawk because they know like we all know everything basically. So there's no you can't really slip with anything. No one even tries it. And at the same also we have a lot of respect for each other. So like every game is very it's very positive. It's very like celebrating each other and like a lot of my games involved a lot of people like complimenting each other's plays like me like saying nice things about what the other person's like when someone pulls off a really cool move that you didn't see coming you're like oh damn that was really good you got me right there for a sec as opposed to having an energy where you're kind of bitter about getting outplayed. It's like really cool when someone does something brilliant that you did not see coming. And I think pretty much every table game I watched, it was like that. I mean, people of course get a little frustrated from time to time with dice or whatever, but even then they're not getting super upset. It's more like commiserating. And the energy was just like incredibly positive. And as you know, in the AOS community, most of our games and most of our events are very positive, but it was like a level above even that, which is already a pretty high standard, which I think would surprise a lot of people. I think people would expect it to be more cutthroat, more negative,
Or try
I,
hard?
more try hard, more sweaty. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's interesting. There's a thing that I like to kind of talk about, which is that the people who end up at the very top of the competitive world, for the most part, it's because they have a self growth mindset. And that applies to like many aspects of their lives. They're all like pretty much across the board amazing people who are super interesting. They they're very like just genuinely warm and developed people who have amazing conversations like left and right. It's a really cool event in many ways, but I like I said, I think it surprised people just how wholesome and positive the energy was from start to finish.
That's really rad. And so I want to go into the structure of the
Yeah.
tournament because I imagine that's going to be something that is a little bit different from what most people are used to.
Yeah.
Most people think of a multi-day GT and they think 5 rounds, but that wasn't necessarily the case here.
Yeah. So last year Worlds was very complicated in its structure, and it was like a nightmare with different round lengths for different days and like a bunch of stuff. This year it was 2 rounds per day, 4 hour games, and 4 days of that. If you were competing to get into the top 16 at at the end of day two, which there was a cutoff for top 16 at a day too, and you were not guaranteed in it. Like if you didn't dominate your bracket, you had to play a shadow round for a fifth round that day. So you're playing all the way until 10:30 p.m., which I was in the shadow round, which we'll get to later when we talk about that. So it was up to 9 games across 4 days, and with long time limits, because normally you expect like 2 hours, 2.5 hours to 3 hours is like a normal round length, and it was 4 hours instead. And they also put up like the pairings half an hour before the round officially started to give you as much time as possible, because they didn't want games coming down to time. They wanted it coming down to decisions in plays, if at all possible. But there's definitely a lot of differences in how you have to approach a tournament that's 4 days long as opposed to one that's 2 days long. Like the exhaustion is a very real factor. If you're playing for 4 days against the best players in the world and you bring an extremely complicated list, it's extremely hard to play and you don't sleep very well, like you're going to be struggling towards the third, fourth day of that event. And like that's something that is really do have to factor in with tournaments like this.
I know I have probably never been to a GT where I've been fully rested, so
Yeah.
that definitely sounds like some kind of secret sauce that perhaps I need to invest myself
you know,
into.
sleep is a hell of a drug. As it turns out, it'll really get you going. But as you know, and many people know, like at AOS events, they're very social events, and oftentimes after your rounds for the day, you're going out, you're having dinner, you maybe go to a bar, or whatever, and you're hanging out with people. And here we're meeting people from all around the world who won't get to see for probably at least 6 months, if not a year. So every night we're like going and we're going to dinner with a bunch of people. We're going to these like little bars and like hanging out or like hanging out in the hotel lobby until like late in the night because we want to talk to these people. And they're all really cool people. Unfortunately, when you then have to get up at like early in the morning and there's like a time difference, I definitely did not sleep more than 5 hours any of the nights, which worth it, but it was a struggle. Towards the end, I was crashing pretty hard.
So that jet lag hit you pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah, it did. And I can only imagine for the people who are coming from like Vietnam or Australia, like coach, like that's like a 14-hour difference or something. It's crazy. Like, well, on the way back, he skips an entire day because of how big the time difference is. Like,
He does the
it's
time warp again.
yeah, the time warp begin, yeah. And so like one of the reasons why they only have 2 games the first day, because normally as you know, three games a day is the standard for the first day. It's two because they want to give people a little bit more time to adjust to jet lag, because it's not really fair if you're like 10 hours difference and then have to play 3 games. It's not really like a level playing field. So most people arrive a few days early, and they also start off with they have less rounds because they want to let people like not feel like they weren't getting a really fair field to play on. You know what I mean? Which I think is really awesome. I'm really glad they did that.
You know, it's an interesting contrast to something like LVO, where people do, like our lovable Aussie companion coach, fly in from a mythical continent that I'm not convinced exists entirely, of Australia. And
Oh, we're talking about whales for a second there.
oh yeah, I'm part Welsh and I'm not entirely certain it exists. But something like LVO still has that front-loaded 3-game day at the beginning.
It
And
does.
do
It
you
does.
think it would actually be better for some tourneys to have their first day with a GT be the 2-game day and then a 3-game day thereafter?
Potentially, but I think the emphasis is on something different for LVO. Like Las Vegas Open is a party and a tournament at the same time, and it's in Vegas, and like it's one of the only tournaments where it's totally socially acceptable to drop if you're not doing well, because like it's Vegas, and it's like a convention, and if you're if you don't win, it's like whatever. Like whereas the World Championships is a display of like what is the absolute peak that you can perform at against the best players in the world. So the emphasis is in a different place. I do think, though, on the almost the exact opposite spectrum, I think most tournaments should add one more round. I would really love if more tournaments were 3-3 as opposed to 3-2. I think it would just be better for the whole tournament scene. But that's I know a lot of people have disagreed with me on that. But this tournament is trying to accomplish something different than your standard tournament is trying to accomplish.
That's really interesting because that makes it a lot more like how a lot of 40K tournaments do things, where they tend to be 6 round tournaments a lot of the time.
They
And
do.
do you feel that that would actually allow things like bad matchups to impact players less?
I do, and that's all, again, that's 8 rounds for the Worlds. Like, imagine if Worlds was 5 rounds. Like, that would just not be satisfying. It really wouldn't. You wouldn't really find a true winner, and a little bit of bad luck for one game doesn't ruin your tournament. Whereas if you have the shorter the tournament, the more variance matters, the more matchups matter, the less your skill can be put on display. So I think in general, like, the longer the better, within reason. I think that there's most tournaments have multiple undefeated at the end of the day, and they're like not getting to really find a true winner because you didn't have one more round when you easily could fit it if you just ran the tournament a little tighter in terms of timing. Can be a little bit disappointing, and there's a reason 40K does it. And now AOS is getting big enough that like we kind of need to. Like, we used to almost never have events over like 50 people. Now we're like passing 100 regularly, consistently. And at that point, you need a 6 round. So I think looking at how Worlds did it with 8 rounds, maybe not the 2-2-2-2, that's a lot, but 3-3 would be an improvement in my opinion.
Excellent. And so that 30-minute notice of who you're getting matched into makes a lot more sense knowing that it happens during lunch as opposed to I would imagine there would have to be like an hour break between rounds that would just simply be
Yeah,
ludicrous if it were like
yeah.
3 games during a day. But actually, how long did you have between the second round of the day and the shadow round that you mentioned? I know we'll get into
Well,
games in a bit, but I'm just
that
curious.
one, yeah, we jump right into games right after this. That was a little bit interesting because they did all the paint judging, and my army was in the showcase, which surprised me because I didn't think my army was good enough to be in the showcase, but it was. So I had to let them do all the paint judging and then swipe my army like 5 minutes before the shadow round. But it was about an hour after the finishing round, and then we jumped in the shadow. I would have liked to jump straight in because we were all tired, but that game was amazing, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But the lunch was an hour between each round. I finished my longest game went like 2.5 hours maybe because you know how I play. I'm a swift and decisive player. So,
You
but other
are
people
you are very
were
efficient.
time.
Actually, I would like to bring up BCP, and we can actually take a look at your games if you would prefer.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
Excellent. It'll just be one moment.
I forgot to talk about my games. My first game was versus William Carahag, who I sent you a picture. He's the one in the blue shirt with the mustache. So if you want to pull that up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's bring up the images.
I wish I
There we
took
go.
pictures with all of my opponents, but I just got caught up in the moment and forgot for most of my games, unfortunately. But I did take them with several. So
Let's go ahead and bring up the round one. Hilariously, round one, you were table one against
yes,
William Caraheg. And
yeah.
let's take a
Because
look at your
they were
list.
it was a sign, right? I was supposed to get first, but all right. Yeah, so my first game was William Carahag. He's from Sweden. He was dope. He was super fun to play against. He was on Skaven, and we were playing on one of my least favorite missions in the game, which is shifting objectives. It's 3 objectives just in a line in the center, and you randomly roll to see which one's the most important. And I just don't like the mission because I think it's extremely favoring one army or another. So I was super nervous going into it because there was like a bunch of Ossiarch Bone Reapers in my pod, and I was like, if I fight them on this, I just automatically lose. When there's other armies where I just automatically win, I don't like the mission for that reason. But the Skaven on Ideneth matchup is like perfectly even on this mission, so I was kind of excited. Like, okay, now we get like a real skill test mission, and the game played out exactly like that. It was a chess match of a game. It was my longest game of the whole tournament. We were timing it. He had like 5-10 minutes left on the clock on it in a 4 hour round at the end of the game. After nearly getting tabled on turn two, he played like super techie and was like scratching his way trying to get back into the game. He was playing Skaven. He had a bunch of shooting and a bunch of teleporting around and being shenanigans. But basically, what I did was I just used my turtles to shoot his knotholes off the table. Turn one, rather than shooting his models, I just shot his knotholes, and then I kept teleporting into combat with knotholes and killing them all game. And The reasoning for that was if he can't get where he needs to be, he can't fight me properly. Skaven can't just walk up and fight you. They have to pop out of things, trick you, and then blow you up with their shooting and stuff like that. If they can't get where they need to be, they can't do that. But even with me doing that, he was being super tricky with it. He was using the bridge, and so he had the knotholes and the bridge, so it was really, really hard to shut him down. But the game came down to this really, really close moment where he basically was going to bridge himself out of a combat. And there was really scary shooting units, Rattling guns, barely tagged by one of my units, and I had another one on the side. He put up the bridge, and I countercast a teleport to put my idol on the sea to make a triangle so that no matter where he went, there was no way for him to fit all 6 models. He could fit like 2 or 3 at a time, but he couldn't actually get out of combat because of that. And I'd preemptively put like a single eel that was left alive in each unit, so he couldn't do it the other direction either, because I knew that was his only way out of the game. So I basically, that one teleport, whether or not I resolved that spell, which I rolled a 12. So, better lucky than good. But I'd set myself up knowing he was going to do that, and because that was his way out. We're playing like super slow, like really like tons of measuring, so we had a lot of time to think. And because the game was all like these macro plays, and I got the spell off, but we both knew like this was going to happen here. This dice roll is everything. But I was in turn 5 still though. Like it was not like the game was just decided right there. It was like we played ourselves this really cool moment that was super super technical and really really satisfying. I think for both of us. You can even see in the picture like he's smiling. He was just like that was an awesome game. And the energy was fantastic, and it felt like an extremely equal skill matchup that I could have asked for a better game. Basically, it was my second favorite game of the event.
Amazing. So that game was your first win of the tournament,
Yes,
and that brought you to round 2. And for those playing at home that may not be aware of or be aware of it, the one of the ways that Worlds does things is you are basically separated into pods where you are playing against a specific set of players rather than like the entire pool of players proper.
yeah. There's a pod for the first half of the tournament. There's a pod for the second half of the tournament. Then you can, so based on your win at the end of the second day, you get put into another pod. And the really weird thing is at the end of the tournament, those pods dissolve and go away, and the standings have nothing to do with your pod. It's just, I think it just has to do with like helping you have narrow it down at least a little bit so you can plan a little bit better. Because if there's 124 possible players all the time, it's just you can't strategize about it too much. And it's kind of strategizing is half the fun at this level. Like sitting and scheming with your opponents, like okay, there's like 4 people I might fight, and I got to plan for all of them. So I think that's a big part of why they did it. But it is the pod system was pretty cool. So going into the second round, I fought Michael Rausch on 4 objectives. And Michael Rausch is a very, very good player. He's a US player. Played against him a couple times before. We were 1-1 against each other going into this, and both of our games had been super, super dicey. When I won, I like tabled him in one turn with Cruel Boys, and when he won, he did the same thing to me basically. And then this game, we were like, okay, hopefully this is like an even dice game. It wasn't. So basically, he was playing Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and with Catacross, who's buffs his whole army, makes him super, super tanky. And he has these guys called Morghasts that hit obscenely hard. And with Catacross making them tanky and need all defense and stuff like that, they're on 2-up save even with my rend for my shooting. So turn 1, I shoot his guys just to make him do alt defense. Like just burn a CP, limits him on what he can do. Because if he has to spend a CP on Catacross, spend CP there for like an auto run another one. So he like it makes his options limited later in the game. I had no intention of really doing it. Maybe I do 3 damage, maybe. He fails all 3 of his 2-up saves, triple ones. It takes 9 damage, and then only passes like 1 ward save. So he loses like a Morghast and a half, which is important because this is like a super, super elite unit. And he has like a few models in his army. He moves up during his turn, and I counter shoot during his turn into the Morghasts. And then he rolls triple ones again for his armor saves and takes another 9 damage on his Morghast. And doesn't charge anything. Goes to my turn, I move, shoot him again, and he rolls another triple ones on his Morghast. 9 ones in a row. Pretty much picking up the whole unit. They had 1 wound left on them. And that made the game go from extremely stressful to much much less stressful. But it still ended up being a very close game because the dice kind of turned around after that and they started going his favor, kind of balanced out towards the end of the game. And we had this, it was a very much like calculated risks back and forth of us both trying to. He started rolling really hot in the second half of the game, and I had very few models left, and he had very few models left. We had like 3 models each on the table for like 3 turns, all of which were damaged. And playing this really like cagey situation, and it came down to me. I failed the battle tactic by leaving someone with 1 wound, which gave it out back into the game, and then he had to draw with me. I think it was he had to basically fight with Catacross and not die, and Catacross died exactly to the wound. So it went from a draw to a loss for him, but it was like a super, super close game. He proceeded to win every other game that he played the whole tournament and dominated all of them. I was his only loss, and he did play that excellently. He kind of played from a disadvantage, worked his way back into the game, and made it very, very close. So it was a kind of a scary game in many ways. I do feel like I played it well. The game was not entirely decided by those ones, but it was really funny and really extreme. And that just happens sometimes. Like it's a dice game at the end of the day. But it was, I think, a story that we both were telling for the whole tournament because it's just so unlikely. 9 1s in a row.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah.
Like
So
I
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I think Ethan was asking what are the odds that a dice rolls 9 1s? Uh,
Consecutively,
I think you just take 1 divided by 6 to the ninth power, do the math yourself.
it's a lot. That's the answer. Is it's extremely unlikely. But at the same time, like his horse character, I charged 3 units and 2 endless spells into it. He'd already taken damage, and he passed 18 out of 18, like 3 up saves, and lived. So it was kind of like it came back the other direction towards the second half of the game, and that one Morgas with 1 wound survived 3 turns of combat before it died.
What a Chad.
Yeah, he was like, you know what? These guys they all died. I'm not. I'm earning their glory back.
And is this Michael here pictured?
Yes, I don't have the stream open, but he's with the hat on, the
With the
M
M?
hat.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, it's Michael Roush. He's a dope dude. He's one of the best players here in the U.S. He plays constantly. He's always doing well. Right now, he's #1 Gits, and I think he's #1 OBR also. After Worlds, he was second going into Worlds with OBR. Now I think he's #1. So he's very, very, very good.
Definitely sounds like it. Let's go ahead and proceed on to round 3.
So round 3 was versus Alex Cotter, who is the next picture with the blue sweater. He was playing Trolls, and Trolls and OBR are similar armies, but Trolls is actually a very, very good matchup for Ideneth. My debuffs are extremely good against him. So giving someone -1 attack when they have 2 attacks that are high damage attacks is really, really powerful. Giving them -1 to hit when they have hitting on 4s is really, really powerful. And I can turn off CP and shred armor saves. So all of the things that he does well, I'm pretty darn good into. We also happen to play on a 6 objective mission, so that favors me for sure because I'm a faster army of the two. But basically, what happened was I gave him first turn, and he moved up to take their lands. He like auto ran some trolls onto the objective, onto the terrain piece, and he scored 8. And I was like, cool. In so doing, he left Skagrot and his Loonshine open. So I teleported a turtle behind him, charged the Loonshine, bounced up the Loonshine to kill Skagrot, and the Loonshine turn 1, and kill the unit of trolls that he had ran up. And then I basically rotated around the map in circles, killing whatever unit was closest to me with my entire army. So I throw like 2,000 points into one unit at a time. And basically just ran circles around him. And there wasn't that much he could have done about it. He did roll pretty well to kind of keep himself in the game for a while. He kept landing like pretty long charges and stuff like that, which helped him like keep fighting. But it was a very, very much an uphill fight for him. And I can't remember what the score was, but I beat him pretty heavily. And I think it was just like one of those things where it's very hard for him to win in that matchup. I guess, and I play against trolls constantly. Like it's one of the armies I play all the time because a lot of my friends play it, so I knew exactly how to tear him apart. And cool start from him. He basically started playing GTS pretty recently. Won an event, kind of surprisingly to himself, and he got a golden ticket and showed up. And I don't know what his end score was, but the end of going it like he went 4-2 over the course of the first 3 days, which is pretty amazing if it's your first like major tournament like this. So I want to shout out like that's impressive to do that well at this level after like really only kind of recently starting to seriously compete. So big shout for him. Also, he was fun, and as you can see in our picture, he was laughing a lot, and so was I. And we are being goofballs. So that I
He's,
won that one from round 3.
he seems like a fun guy.
Yeah, he was. We had a very fun game.
Let me take a look. I'm gonna see where Alex ended up in the overall placings, as you mentioned. It looks like he was 50 with a dead even 4 wins, 4 losses, which I feel at a competition
Yeah,
at this level, that's a really good showing, honestly,
yeah.
for somebody who's
So
new to the scene.
for our whole team that we showed up with, well, pretty much all of us agreed, and we were all on the same basic page about it, that like if you do 4-4, you're killing it. Like if you can go even at the strongest, hardest competition in the world, then that's pretty badass. Like that means that you really are good, and you really have worked, and like you're bringing something to the table. You know, if you can get a 5-3, even better. Of course, everyone hopes to get in the top 8. Everyone hopes to win the whole tournament, but like realistically, that's not going to happen. Every single player there is fantastic. Every single player there is killer. Like so, if you can win even half of your games against the best players in the world, that's something to be very proud of.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going negative at that point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, last year I went 2-6. I mean, most of my losses are very close, but like that's how it is, right? And this year I did much better. I'll get to my end record, you know, we'll get there. But yeah, so here I was 3-0 going into round 4, and round 4 determines who makes top 16 cut. And I matched into Joran Camper, who is or Joran,
oh,
I think
do
it's
we
Joran.
want to talk about the is the shadow round before or
That's
after
after.
this?
It's after
Oh,
this. It's
it's
after this.
after.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I'm fighting Joran Camper.
That is
Um,
not Jordan Camper pictured. Did you
no,
have a picture with him?
I did not take a picture with him. I forgot
Okay.
to. Um,
Then we will simply bring up his list, and that will be Joran for the folks
so
at home.
it might be Joran. I think it actually is Joran.
Oh,
It's
Joran?
pronounced. Yeah, I think so. He is in by many people considered to be the best player in the world. He won World Singles, which is at like the World Team Championships. It's a singles tournament that's really big also. The last 2 years in a row, going undefeated both years, and he's just really, really well known. He's an incredibly immaculate. Like his play is super, super clean. He's has quite a reputation. So I was a little bit nervous going into it, but it's versus Ossiarch Bone Reapers, which I do consider to be a decently good matchup. So this game was really interesting. He was playing 25 horses and Nagash. It's a very extreme list. Basically what it does is you throw horses at people, and when 10 of them die, you bring them back with Nagash, and you're just throwing buffs and being annoying with Nagash during the whole game, and then it's just like a late game grindy sort of thing. So I end up having first turn. I do seize the center between these two buildings, and he's in like an interesting position trying to deny it, but he can't really stop me. And I make a subtle mistake of putting the wrong of my two monsters in the front half. I put the turtle in front of the storm. My plan is to teleport the turtle back out, but I'm trying to block off space so he can't deny my battle tactic with a counter charge. So I was like using him sideways to kind of block off space so he can't stop me from getting my points. And I knew I'd never be able to get Caesar Center after turn 1. So I kind of felt like I had to do it that turn. And if I do like take the flanks, I'm too spread out, he can take me apart. I need all my stuff to be in a tight ball so the debuffs all apply and he can't do enough damage to kill my units. So I made this really tight ball in the center of the table that's super hard to get through. But I kind of positioned a little bit wrong, and I'm banking on a countercast teleport, which goes off on a 5 of my dice, but you also can unbind it, right? And I don't get it going into that. So he ends up killing my turtle. He goes in pretty hard. And he does a solid amount of damage. Nothing crazy, but like he kills a turtle basically and kills like an eel or two. And then it comes into my turn. I win the priority. And this is like a funny moment. I entirely forgot to name a battle tactic because I saw this opening. He basically had left spaces where I could slip in and kill Nagash if I rolled decently. So I literally said out loud to him like, well, someone's about to lose right now. Either you or me, we don't know yet, but someone's losing. And I cast my spell, I give Nagash -1 to save. And I did a series of movements where like I had Nagash tagged with one eel and the sea. So the sea retreats. I run and charge around the building with my idol on the sea and my turtle. because people often underestimate how far Idith can move on that turn. I think he a little bit not like massively. He was very careful, but I think he didn't realize I could get all the way around and then charge through something. But I think he was also kind of okay with me taking those big risks. So I go in, I get the myself with a spell off, I shoot everything at Nagash, I do 8 damage in the shooting phase after his ward saves and everything. And then I go in and my turtle misses 6 out of 7 hits on a 3-up, and then my storm misses 5 out of 6 on a 2-up.
What?
And I do not kill Nagash, obviously. And the game pretty much is over from that point. But I played it very tight for the rest of the game. I tried actually almost get back in the game like 6 times. I needed hot dice. I didn't really like roll kind of good. I need to roll really good in a bunch of situations. But I kept seeing openings and trying to get them. And I had one model on the table, and I almost denied 2 battle tactics, and I almost scored like 8 each turn. But like it kept barely not making it. And they're all risky plays. It was not like, oh, I should have gotten them. But there was a bunch of chances when I actually still could have won the game after that. But it was definitely extremely risky play that I did there. And I was like 65% chance to kill Nagash. It was not guaranteed. That's why I was like, you know, I knew it was a very calculated risk going in. And if I do kill Nagash, I pretty much win on the spot. But instead, what happened was Nagash lived. I ended up basically doing the last point of damage shooting of 10 horses. I had 1 wound left, and he brought them back with a full 10 unit. Nagash was still alive. And he basically killed everything but my C, who then teleported around the table trying to score stuff. I had 1 eel running around scoring stuff. I did my best there, but I lost it, so I had to go play the shadow round. But when the shadow round, I'm still in the top 16. The
Now
shadow round
the
is basically just the top 2 players who have only 1 loss in the bracket are competing to see if they get in to the top 16, because 2 players from each bracket get top 16.
And a special note to viewers at home, there is nothing in BCP to show the shadow round. It is
Yes.
truly shrouded in darkness, as its name would suggest.
So this shadow round is at this point legendary. Pretty much everyone agrees it was the most hype game of the entire event across the board. It was versus Alex Gonzalez, who is a close friend of mine. That we have, Alex, the picture with him with the in the Black Corsairs outfit. Um, and we basically both went up to each other and talked to each other. And we're like, listen, I don't care if you get top 16 or me. I'm happy either way. We're both saying the same basic things to each other. Like, let's just have an awesome game and just have a blast with it, and whoever wins wins. And then we both just shook our hands on it. We like had a couple beers, and he was having like tequila shots, and I was drinking like Imperial IPAs during this whole game. So we were like, whatever, we're gonna have a good time. They announced the map, and it is Star Strike.
Oh God.
Yeah. So if you don't know, Star Strike is random objectives fall on the table. So you have no idea where the map is going to happen. It's completely random. It's an extremely like ridiculous map. Like no one ever plays it in a serious competition. So then playing it at Worlds was hilarious. And me and him were just like, "Oh, it's go time. Like this is going to be fucking fun." So we start our game. He moves up. He like gets some holds the center objective after it drops kind of near the center. He does like Caesar land or something. I don't remember what his battle tactic was actually. No, he just take the flanks. And I teleport a turtle all the way on the other side of the map, like in front of where he's going to take the flanks. And ostensibly to stop him from scoring take the flanks, but I know I can't actually stop him from doing that. My only goal there is to basically bait his whole army to go after that turtle. Because if they're all on that side, unless both the other star strikes land on that side of the table, I just win the game on the spot, basically. And he falls for it. He goes all the way in on it, and then to make things worse, he fails to kill the turtle. So he's got 4 units in combat with the turtle. Admittedly, I'm -1 to hit. I have like 16 wounds on a 3-up, 5-up. I do all defense, and I countershot and killed 6 of his infantry on the way in. So he does that. I then kill the boatman in combat with the turtle. So now he can't get his guys back on the other side of the table. But then it goes into me, and I fail a rerollable 3-inch charge with my turtle, and fail to take the center. So I only score my battle tactic turn 1, and which hilariously was seize the center with a couple units, but I don't actually take the objective points. So he's ahead on points right here, but I'm in a really good position. And we play this basically super cagey game, going back and forth, and there's like all these explosive plays, and we're constantly like get you, gotcha, like boom, and we're like screaming and yelling and like dancing and dabbing on each other, and just talking mad shit the whole time. and getting really like amped up. Basically, the crowd starts to gather. We end up having like 40 or 50 people right around our table. We got multiple judges at our table. Matt Rose is at our table watching our game, and then despite the hype, like we're actually playing like incredibly technically, like all sorts of like really crazy blowout plays. Like when I did Seize the Center, I moved a unit up and I charged several units in and then used power through to move backwards. So he couldn't countercharge, he couldn't pile into me, but I powered through to be back onto Caesar Center with the same unit that just fought. That way, because he was like 4 inches away from the center when I did Caesar Center, and everyone was like, "Why would you do that? It's stupid." But I had all these like clever plays going on. He was doing similar stuff to me. Like it was a very much like back and forth, lots of blowout plays. And we're playing, and we're like dead even, dead even, dead even every turn. We get to the bottom of 5, and we're still dead even. And it's the shadow round. You can't tie because someone has to win to get a top 16. So they make a ruling on the spot. They're just adding another round. So they end up playing a 6th round, and we barely have any models left on the table. And this really funny moment happens. So basically, I have the Eidolon the Storm, who you can't hit on better than a 4, and weapon effects don't apply to. 4 times previous in the game, he had fought the Storm, and each time he was like, "I'm hitting on 3s." I'm like, "No, you're hitting on 4s. You can't have better than 4s." He's like, "Oh, crits." I'm like, "No crits. Can't do them." 4 times. The 5th time, he did all out attack. And I just didn't say anything. I was like, okay. And he rolled his dice and he's like hitting on 2s. I'm like, it's on 4s. And he's like, oh, why'd you tell me? I'm like, it's the 5th time, dude. Like at a certain point, I gotta stop telling you. And we're like talking shit to each other basically. And then during the 6th round, when we're in this draw situation, he does it again. He all attacks my Eidolon, who he can't handle better than the 4, and we're just like laughing, like falling on the floor, just like cackling at each other. But we're in the 6th round, goes to the bottom of the 6th round, and I just basically skip my turn and go into combat, which I shouldn't have done. I was like, all right, combat, I guess, because like we're just have 1 unit each and we're sitting in a fight. I guess I'll start rolling. And then I realized, oh, I should have retreated. If I just retreat over him, it goes to the next round. I've always strikes first, get to rally, I get to shoot him. And I didn't. I failed to kill enough models. He still controlled the objective, and I lost in the 6th round. So it was like, but like we were like hugging afterwards, and I was just purely cheering for him to get this top 16. Like no stress at all. Like it was the best possible way a game of Warhammer can go with that much stakes on it. And now he's got another golden ticket for making top 16, and I think he did 2-2 in the top 16, so he ended up doing pretty good. Didn't win the whole tournament, but like whatever. Like it's not really about that. I don't think he did really well. So it was an awesome game.
That that sounds like possibly the most epic game of Warhammer I have ever witnessed secondhand. And I can only imagine the pressure that you must have been under having the guy who wrote the rules at your table. Like Tom, Tom is one thing. He has resting Welsh face and
Oh yeah.
he has his level of quiet intimidation. And, no offense to any Welsh people in the audience. It's a running meme, I'm sorry.
Oh we will get to that as well later in the tournament because it does come up, the Welsh thing. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
indeed. But to have the man who literally makes all of this possible standing there and if you fuck up your rules, you
Yeah.
know,
Like you literally have like the lead rules designer there. You have several like very well-known TOs and judges directly at our table. Plus there's a crowd of like 40 or 50 world-class players surrounding our table, and we're both totally drunk. Like during the game, I had 2 Imperial IPAs and 4 Trulies, and I had 2 Trulies before the game as well, because we both agreed, like, we're just gonna get drunk and be silly with it, and whoever wins wins. So like, there's a lot of pressure to be like, you have to play perfectly with a huge crowd, the lead designer right there, and you've got a good amount of drinks in your system, and we had started playing at 8:30 in the morning, and that game finished at 10 p.m. maybe 10:30, like so the exhaustion too on top of all that, but it was just an amazing experience. That's my favorite game of the event and probably one of my favorite games I've ever played for Hammer.
it is the stuff of legends for sure.
Yeah.
And so after that point, after that night, possibly a little hungover, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's just a little more
A
than a little bit,
little,
admittedly, but
a little. I mean, your brain was taxed, but your liver was perhaps taxed a bit more that evening, I think.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Plus, I only slept like 5 hours that night again, but I was actually feeling very energized and pretty clear-headed going into day three and excited to play. I was drinking water and all that the whole time. Like I wasn't being unhealthy. But yeah, so going in, I knew I was not in top 16 anymore, but now I'm basically playing for best Idoneth, and because how the structure works, there's a potential of me getting second place, which I got very, very close to. So I'm still competing, or third place. I can't get second. First and second is going to be the finalists, but I could get bronze or whatever, and I could get best Idoneth, and we're always competing to improve our overall country standings. So there's still a lot to play for. Still super motivating. Because I can't win the whole event doesn't mean I can't do super well. So going into round 5. What did I play round 5 actually? I can't remember which order these two people.
Uh,
Oh, I remember.
Alexis
Alexis
Boucher.
Boucher. Yeah. So this is the only one of the games where I truly do feel like I got fairly consistently outplayed. Most every other game was either equal or I felt like I was outplaying or it was like very close. Like Alexis Boucher, he's playing Soul Blight. He did roll really hot turn 1, but that's not why I lost. So I moved up. I did some plays and stuff like that. I took top of turn, and it was on Jaws of Galay. So objectives get deleted over the course of the game. But I actually took top of 1 intentionally because I didn't want to delete any objectives, and I don't think he did either. And there was no way I was going to be able to stop him from getting most of his battle tactics, but there's a couple ways he could have stopped me potentially. So I wanted to guarantee I was going to score 10 turn 1 and then see if he decided to score under me. Because then if he doubles me, also, like, I'm going to be able to take points. So I still feel confident in my ability to take points from him no matter where he is. And I don't feel confident in my ability to deny him. So I took top of 1. And that was fine, but I kind of positioned a little bit wrong. I put my Eidolons, it should have been swapped in where they were in my formation. Because I ended up having the sea closer to him and the storm a little farther away when it should have been the other way around. And he punishes me pretty hard for that. He does come out of the grave with 20 Graveguard, lands the charge, swings in, and he kind of splits his attack. And I don't think his intent was to kill everything. I think he was just trying to do some damage and just lock me in combat and start grinding at me. But he ends up rolling 26 mortals on one Graveguard activation and picking up my C and all 6 of my eels with those Graveyard in that combat phase. So now I'm in a very tough position. I have 3 models on the table at the bottom of 1. But I'm still actually very much in the game. It's deceptive about this turtle list is that I only have 3 models, but it's 1350 points worth of models. So I still have 2/3 of my army. So I basically am cruise missiling around trying to like score 10, trying to kill off things, trying to clear space, but I keep leaving units with like 1 wound left and being tagged in combat. Meanwhile, he's like summoning dogs in these super annoying places and like pinning things in really like and piling in really cleverly so I can't punish him in a lot of places. Hot dice make it worse for me than it already was, but like he's predicting where my battle tactics are going to be and preemptively stopping every tactic I could potentially do turn 4 and 5. It just lets me do well on turn 2 and 3, knowing that if he does all these things, there's no way I can get a tactic turn 4 and 5. And that's exactly what happens. Like he sat there planning out the movements and summoning things and leaving them units that were going to do nothing for the rest of the game. Just standing there, so turn 4 and 5, I can't do tactics. So it was very like really far ahead thinking that he was doing. Then when we got to round 4, and I realized why he'd put those models in those places, and I basically had lost at that point. I had some outs, but they were like very very dicey, and I didn't get them. But like the dice were not where I lost that game. He was like next level chess game going on, and he beat me for sure on that. And that was a really cool experience to see some because normally I'm a few steps ahead of my opponent, and him being that many more steps ahead of me was like kind of eye opening, and seeing just how willing he was to just leave a unit there, not even scoring points the entire game. So at the end of the game, I couldn't do something. That was a really cool thing to see, and that's the sort of stuff you'll see at Worlds that like you learn a lot. Actually, speaking of which, I want to scroll back a little bit and learn something I learned from Yoren that I thought was really cool. At the beginning of his turns, he would take the 3-inch sticks, and he had like 20 of them, and he would cover my entire army with 3-inch stick combat range markers, every single thing, and crisscrossing them so he knew exactly where all my threat ranges were. And you take like 9-inch sticks and measure out teleports before doing anything. No naming battle tactics, no casting, just sticks. You take like 5-10 minutes just putting sticks on the table. And his turn would be like really quick because he made all the decisions, but like that's something I want to pick up for myself is that level of meticulous setup to each turn. Doing that so you don't make mistakes. You give yourself space to think. You force yourself to stop and be like, okay, let me think through my turn before I take any actions. I thought it was a really cool thing. Another thing I picked up at this event. But yeah,
That that is some galaxy brain playing, honestly, with the sticks everywhere.
yeah,
And I think your experience with Alex also underscores that, when you have two players of this caliber going against one another, that's a point where sometimes dice can very much make the difference when you're breaking even like that. And
yeah,
there are things like who gets what priority. It's the drama of the unknown with the dice versus
yeah.
the versus what you can meticulously plan. And I think the adaptability in face of that is on full display with a lot of these plays.
Yeah, but it also at the same time shows a much of the opposite, where at this level of play, dice very rarely matters as much as it does at lower playing skill, because everyone is always planning around the potential of rolling poorly or rolling really well. They like don't assume things are going to work, so they have backup plans built in, and they don't overcommit. They commit exactly as much as they need to, so it's harder to punish when the dice go badly. There are games that are decided by dice, but mostly the dice just give someone an advantage or a disadvantage, but it's like rare. Only one of my games was dice a deciding factor. The Roush game was like it's a funny story, but like that's not really what the game was about. It did help. It gave me an advantage, but it didn't like win me the game on the spot or anything like that. Whereas I think in a lower skill play, people for one they tilt. Like if they start rolling badly, they start playing badly, and was not the case here. Like people rolling bad, they just stayed locked in, and people have backup plans for everything, so you don't need your dice to succeed. You hope they do, and if everything fails consecutively, then you know that happens. But it's very rare. That's like maybe 1 in 20 games that they're like that. So it's
That's
it's it's kind of a cool thing to see.
that's really interesting to know as someone who, I myself am not at your level, but I'm someone who's aspiring to be. And so to understand that your dice can fail you, but you can also plan, you can have contingencies for that failure, and that's how you succeed at this level is really, really helpful, honestly.
Yeah, it is. And I think the thing is that like when your dice fail you, when you're taking when you're making a play that you probably shouldn't be making, you really, really feel it. When you're relying on your dice to bail you out of a suboptimal decision, and they don't, and you lose the game because of it, you really feel those dice failing you. Whereas when you're making a decision that's done very with a lot of precision and a lot of clarity of intent, like you know exactly what you're doing, it's very calculated, and it doesn't work out, you've already factored in the fact that it might not work out and positioned accordingly and set yourself up accordingly. So you're extending as little as possible to get the maximum reward if it does work and the minimal punishment if it doesn't. And a lot of people are playing like that. Now on the opposite end of things, at this level event, a small mistake, game over a lot of time. Like you mess up in a small way, done. You will get punished so hard for the smallest positioning error that it can be immediately game ending, which is what happened in my next game. So the next game, I fought Dario Groman, who's a very, very famous German player. He won Raccoon Rumble, which is like one of the biggest events in the world, and he's super well known, and he is very, very good. And he was playing Osterreich Bone Reapers with Catacross and 30 horses. And basically, he put the plus one to save Catacross onto all three of his horse units and didn't put it on Catacross, thinking that Catacross, like most armies can't kill Catacross. He was behind the horses. But basically, he put Catacross on one side of this little terrain piece with 10 horses in front of him. And he had the Mortek guard who were bodyguards on him. So he's like, he can't die. But he was just a little bit too far forward. And I saw that and I was like, that's probably going to be game right here. So I move up my whole army down one flank, And I have a couple guys on one side of the table. And I make some misplays here, which I'll talk about, but I want to highlight just how bad a positioning error can be. And by talking about my mistakes now, they didn't even matter at that point. He was a little bit too far forward. I fly my two turtles forward and my Eidolon and three of my eels, and I shoot the Mortite guard off. They're the bodyguards. I shoot them so they not my attack. I'm on run and charge turn. I fly right over his screens. I roll not great, kind of bad actually. I don't even kill Catacross right there. I do like 17 damage to him, and he almost kills my turtle back, and I have to power through with that turtle so it doesn't die. So I don't fail my battle tactic. I entirely forgot to charge with one of my units of eels, but this one play that mattered immediately decided the game because he couldn't get out of it, and I proceed to kill Catacross and like right after this, and his wizard. And he's got these like horses and stuff like this over here, but none of this matters anymore because that one positioning mistake decided the rest of the game. And it was only by about this much space on the table, like that his Catacross was too far forward. And the funny thing is, like, if he'd been even farther forward, I couldn't have flown over the horses because there would have been no space. So he was just in the wrong spot. And me killing Catacross, like during his turn on that activation, basically, and he had to spend all his CP keeping him alive, so he couldn't do the buff to his army. He couldn't like he had, wanted to do like a bunch of stuff, but there was nothing he could do. Basically, Catacross died during his turn. The rest of the game he's playing super cagey, trying to score points, but he basically his army relies on Catacross so heavily, and he knows that, I know that, and so mispositioning Catacross was just game ending. But it was a really cool game of Battle Tactics Denial. I failed two 4-inch counter charges. I failed a bunch of dice rolls. I failed 12 out of 13 armor saves on the turtle on that turn 2, and then passed no ward saves. And it had 1 wound left, but it should have taken like 4 damage. Like, I was not rolling good. But the dice didn't matter because positioning is everything. Target priority is everything. He had no way to punish me for doing that because of how he positioned, and he relied entirely on that key piece being alive for his army to function. So, and a lot of games come down to that level where like my game versus Alexis Boucher, I had the Eidolon swapped and where they should have been. Everything else was right in my positioning. The two Eidolons should have been swapped, and that chain reaction led to me losing the game. The Dario Groman one was the opposite in this, whereas Catacomb was in the slightly wrong position and the game was over.
Interesting. And, as Hale Noxid said in the chat, Warhammer, a game of inches. And it's sounding
It
like it's really more of a game of inches than it is a game of dice past a certain point.
It absolutely is. There's a statistic that I like to talk about. So I used to play competitive Magic. The best players in Magic, like the best in the world, has like a 58% win rate or something globally, or at least against top players. The best players in Warhammer have an 85 to 95% win rate because it's not a game of dice. The dice matter, but it's not a dice game. Like, it's a measurement game, it's a positioning game, and a movement game. The dice do affect things, and they can, in the very extreme cases, they definitely matter. But you can roll bad the entire game and still win. Like, I don't think I rolled very good this tournament overall. I think I rolled mostly subpar, with a few games being a little bit warm, but like nothing too crazy. And I just actually that's not true. My next game I was pretty hot, but that's again not why that's not why the game went the way it did. So I think one advice I'd like to give to people who are trying to get better is don't even like talk about your dice. Don't even acknowledge them. Like, just roll them, count them, and just don't even be like, oh, is it good? Was it bad? It doesn't matter. Just focus on decisions. Focus on the smallest movements, and try to make the right plays. And if it doesn't work with the dice, it doesn't work. But it's not with that's rarely what decides the game.
Excellent. Excellent words of wisdom, which I'll be taking into my next GT, I know. And from round 6, you then went on to play, once it decides to load on my end.
I believe it was Lex on Cruel Boys.
Let's see here. I trust your memory.
I think
Here
his
we
name was
go.
Lex, and it was Cruel Boys.
Lex DeCraw.
So this list is very much a hard counter to what I'm doing. He's got 5 units of Monster Killers. I'm running 1650 points of monsters out of 2000. He's got a Beast Skewer Killbow, and he's got Kragnos. Those are all anti-monster. On top of that, Cruel Boys is very, very mobile, very tricksy. I do not have a lot of units in my army, so his ability to teleport around the table with small little units is hard for me to shut down. Cruel Boys used to be my main army, so like I look at this list and I know what it can do. And I think for number one, that was one of my saving graces, is I knew going in everything Cruel Boys can do. I still forgot one of their plays though, which I'll get to. But going in, I had a very I knew he was one of the four people I might fight. So I had a very clear game plan against it because I knew he was going to be my hardest matchup. So the night before I sat and planned out, like, I know what the next mission is. The other people, I'm confident in my ability to at least approach it from even footing. This one, if I get it, I need to have a good plan. So I figured one out. Basically, what I did was I summoned a bunch of endless spells and played back and made it so that you can't teleport to my terrain pieces or to my back objective with endless spells because you can't teleport within to be within 9 inches of them. So he has to land like a 9 inch charge if he wants to like take their land or stuff like that. So now I'm limiting his plays, and basically I sent wherever Kragnos was, I sent some threats down the other side and played really far back with the other ones, and I put a screen of eels in between buildings so that Kragnos' base is huge. So I just need to make sure that Kragnos couldn't get between my eels and buildings. So he couldn't get to my juicy threats. And I was doing that. I was keeping score even and deleting small units while he wasn't killing anything because he can't finish off my big targets without committing really hard onto them. And he saw that his army was kind of getting picked apart piece by piece. And he knew he needed to go in. He knew he couldn't. It was going to be hard for him to get in. But I slightly mispositioned my eels. So there was like this tiny little ability for him to like barely tag my Eidolon of the Sea. But I did have two turtles sitting right behind there. And he was taking top of turn. So I knew, okay, Sea's probably going to die. And I'm going to kill the turtle. I'm going to kill Kagros with the turtles. And then I basically have 3 turtles, 5 eels, and the Eidolon of the Storm versus his army, which has now been significantly less threatened. He goes in and he is a -1 attack, can't use CP, and he kind of whiffs, and I do all defense. He doesn't kill the Eidolon. He has 5 morals on the charge. He could do up to 36. So he did 5, so I'm like, cool, that's lucky. The Sea and the Eels fight back into him and do 15 damage, which is pretty filthy. Like, I didn't expect to do much damage, but Kragnos is only on a 4-up save, so it goes to a 5 up there, and if I roll pretty high on the dice, he just kind of loses. So he powers through backwards, which he technically could have done. We both forgot he couldn't do it because forgot no CP, but the game pretty much ended right there because I move forward, I shoot Kragnos off the table because he's only got 1 wound left. He tries to rally him, but healing up 2 or 3 wounds when I have turtles doesn't do anything. And I basically just rotate the circles around him so he can't get more than 1 or 2 units in me at a time. And I basically delete one or two units a turn, and he just doesn't have the mass to kill me. But he's very hard to stop from scoring points. So he still scored pretty darn high. Well, actually didn't score that high. He's going to get up, right? But he was scoring battle tactics and just doing the best he could. But he was at a huge disadvantage at that point. So I ended up winning 45-22 in a nightmare matchup. The dice did kind of matter, but like there's that one shining moment with Kragnos. I think I rolled exceptionally poorly on most other things the whole game. Like the storm and 3 eels killed like 1 model and across like 2 turns of combat, and the storm took 9 damage from a tiny little 7-man unit at the same turn, and then like like it was just like one of those things where that one shining moment was big dice, but it was more that he couldn't get to me with the threats that mattered, and my little eels had tagged his shooting, so he couldn't shoot at me. And if he had gotten Kragnos in juicily, he would have won immediately, but he didn't. And knew I had to make everything I could do to make it so he can't do that.
I find it really interesting that his list is skewed towards killing monsters. And you are basically all monsters, give or take some eels.
Yeah,
And some people might look at that and, think, from your position might think, I've lost. This skew is too much for me. But
yeah,
you can play against something built to kill your list and still come out on top.
you absolutely can. I think people overestimate how important matchups are. They do matter, but what they really matter for is informing your decisions. If I know that I can't fight his army the way he wants to fight. If I do that, I will lose badly, like really badly. I also can't fight him the way that I would normally play matchups. I can't slam turtles into things because I don't get to do monster actions. I'm going to be at like strike last. He's going to do all this stuff. I'm going to get tagged in and I'm going to get torn apart. Um, so you have to. A bad matchup is just a harder matchup. It's a more complicated matchup that you have to really think through on how you're going to approach it. And you may not be able to figure out what way to approach that is, but what you have to do is sit down and start asking yourself, how can I win? What does me winning this matchup look like? Like what do I have to do and what has to happen for me to win? And then how do I make that happen? And I knew that I had to Pragnos had to not land a meaningful charge. I did not get doubled. And I had to not let my turtles get bogged down by monster killers. And so my entire game plan is based around that, essentially. If I can just keep shooting him and keeps killing things with my Idol in the Storm, my eels, and keeping my turtles safe so I can keep shooting all game, I can win that game. And so that's what I did. He should have just shoved everything down my throat. He played really cagey and he should not have. If he had just jammed his entire army at me, I probably just get bogged down, stuck down, and Kragnos gets to land charges where he wants to, and he could probably pick up my army. So I think he was too confident in the matchup and didn't really think about what he had to do because he's like, well, I just kind of win, right? And he's a very good player, but like I'm just guessing that's kind of like he didn't because I was talking to some other Cool Boys players afterwards, just like this matchup, like and they're like, this is how I would have played. I'm like, yeah, like that's probably the way to do it, but bad matchups are just
Sometimes.
hard. There's hard. They're not auto losses, and people take them as auto losses, and they're absolutely not.
And sometimes the answer is to Unga Bunga, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really favored in the matchup, and specifically in a stat sort of way, Unga, the Bungas, just fucking send. Um,
Unga every Bunga.
yeah, go full Bunga. It's scary to do that, especially at Worlds, but like, so that's what you gotta do. I mean, I did that in a couple of my matchups. So,
You
no
know,
time. I mean, that's one of my skill sets, admittedly, is knowing when to go all in. But yeah,
something that I think that also underscores is that I think a lot of people, when they put together a list, they have this idea in their head of like, this is what this list does to win. And I think players, as they're trying to develop those competitive skills, will oftentimes do that regardless of what they're facing. And so, like, you have a list that's like, oh, this rushes in and this just overwhelms the opponent. Well, against certain lists and with certain, screening scenarios and on certain battle plans, that may not necessarily be what you want to do.
yes, I absolutely agree with you on that. Having one idea of how a list plays, it will work sometimes, but most of the time you're gonna have to be able to adjust matchup by matchup, situation by situation. You have to keep yourself flexible, and that's one of the reasons why I and many other top players like myself really, really strongly suggest sticking to one army, and especially one more or less similar build of that army for a long time because it'll teach you the skills of how to take something and play it in many different ways, and how to open your mind on what an army is capable of and what units are capable of, and how you can approach a matchup. And once most of the army's on autopilot, you can start really thinking about, okay, but how do I want to play this map, this situation? And once you're able to start doing that, dice will start mattering a lot less. Matchups start mattering a lot less. They still matter, but way less than they did and because it can be hard to see the mistakes you're making until you've played that army for long enough that you start being able to see them in the first place. When I used to play competitive Magic, I had this thing I used to say, but like it really applies to Warhammer too. That the game where you feel like you're making the most mistakes, you're actually probably playing better than you normally do, because the difference is that now you're seeing the mistakes. You're always going to be making mistakes, but most of the time you don't see them. If you can see where you're going wrong during the game, it's not that you're making more mistakes; it's that you're spotting the mistakes. And once you start being able to see those ones, that's when you're going to start doing a lot better. And to do that, you have to play the same army for a long time.
Words of wisdom for sure. Now, from here, this was the penultimate round of the tourney. we go
Yes,
into the final,
the final
the
game.
the round 8, the number of corn because blood will be shed. And tell us about this
Yeah.
one once I find it.
Whew. So this one's a bit of a
There we
tale.
go.
There's a lot of backstory here. So it's versus Matthew Goldsboro, who's a very well-known player. He's extremely good. I've never played him against him before, but I was very excited to play against him. For those of you who don't know, I had a bit of a sarcastic Twitter beef where I was saying that Wales isn't a country because its flag has a dragon on it and stuff. And I know I have some Welsh friends, so I was just like
It's their
jokingly,
national bird.
I was being like a classic caricature of an American who doesn't know shit and just claiming it was fake and like it was a bunch of stuff and like it became this whole thing and all of Team Wales knows it's a joke but now they like keep a record against me and if I'm ahead then Wales isn't real but if they're ahead then Wales is a real country. Um so he's a Welsh player and so there's already that little like beef and he's also an Idneth so we're on the same army we have the same score going in. I'm in like fourth place and he's in fifth place. We're basically tied, or maybe it's the other way around. We're basically tied going into this final round. And overall standings, we're like right there neck and neck. We're playing for like third place and top Ideneth. And we're both very well known players on the very similar army. So it's exciting. And the matchup and the map is also like equal for both of us. So I'm really hyped about this. We start playing and there's a lot of movement going on and stuff like that in turn one. But immediately there's a dice difference going on. He's like he gets off all of his spells. I get off none of my spells. I'm bound nothing. I'm doing like no damage in my shooting phase. I'm failing all my charges. Like I end up having to like do all these like weird shenanigans just to score points in my first turn. And like he has this I don't know C exposed. I shoot it with everything and charge it. And I can't kill it. I can't kill a shark. Like I'm not doing much, but I'm like okay, that's a little bit frustrating. But it's just turn one. So we go into turn two, and I have the top of the turn. No, he takes top of the turn. Yeah, he takes top of the turn. And his Eidolon on the Sea is stuck in melee with like one wound left with my eels. He names Do Not Waver. And he's a turtle. He's a shark with one wound left as well. I'm like, well, that's risky. And he circles around and he ends up basically shooting the eels out of combat with his sea so he can get out of there safely. And moves around. I try and counter shoot the shark. I do no damage to it. If I kill it, he does rally it, so I have to do like 3 damage, but one turtle shot kills it still. Do no damage to it. He comes around to the side, charges a bunch of stuff in. I try and counter charge a turtle 6 inches to again deny his tactic, roll a 4 inch charge. And then he makes all his charges and he's at minus one attack, but I failed the other minus one attack. I failed the no CP, so those are both 3-up rolls. I failed both those. Goes in and he activates with one of his units into my eels, and he kills most of them. He leaves one guy left. And I basically start focusing all my attacks into his 3-man eels, trying to deny his tactics. If I can kill 3-man eels, he still fails his tactic. He's fighting 2 Eidolons and 3 eels. First one activates, I do 2 damage. And I'm like, okay, well, it's only 1 eel. Like, I'm not really expecting much. He then activates a bunch of damage to me with some stuff. The sea takes 9 damage from his storm after he split attacks and he kills off the eels. So I fail all my saves, fill all my ward saves, swing into the 3 eels, do 2 damage, and then he proceeds to activate again, kills my C. I pass 0 armor saves, pass 0 ward saves. Then I still have my Storm, pile in, attack those same eels, do 2 more damage with my Storm. He activates 6 defensive eels, and I fail all but 1 armor save and all but 1 ward save, and my Storm also dies. So now I've got 2 models left going into my second turn because everything else died. I am about to take 2 objectives, move up, both of them 4 inches outside of his Reavers, fail both the charges. They both shoot. They do 0 damage across both of them. Charge in and miss 6 out of 7 attacks to the turtle. Power through and do 1 mortal, and then proceed to get doubled.
Oh my
So
god.
basically, like it. Those games happen sometimes. It it was like our movement and everything was like very cagey. Like we were playing. It was going to be a really good game, and we were both like super disappointed because like we were both very excited to play that game, and it didn't really feel like a game. And it's very rare that those games happen. Like maybe once in every like 3 GTs I get a game that's like that for one player or the other, but it does happen sometimes. So it was a very disappointing end to the event. Not because I lost. I'm like totally fine with losing, but it just was like a really cool moment that could have happened. And I was hoping for like a 5-turn game and a 1-point game, and I didn't really care who won. Not really. Like it was going to be an awesome story and a really fun thing, and I was going to learn a lot from it no matter what. So it sucked that it happened that way, but I ended up going 5-3, which is pretty still very good. Like I'm still very happy with 5-3. I had a very real shot at getting like third place. I
Bringing up
think
your placing right now for the people at home.
I think I got 26 and I something like that.
Yeah, it was
Which is pretty good. Out of 124 players, that's fine. Like I think given everything and given the way that my losses happened, like I'm quite happy with that. Like if I'd been playing mediocre and rolling good and stuff like that, or like what I don't know, and got that placement, I wouldn't be as proud. But I think I played a lot of very, very, very good players, even at this level. Like there's there's everyone there is very good, but there's the people who are like terrifyingly good, like Jordan Camper, like those are, like the best players in the actual world, who are like another level above everyone. I fought several players like that, like Dario Gromans, like that, and I think I held my own. I think I all my micro was very good, and most of my macro decisions were very, very good. But I want to say in summary that almost all the mistakes I made, barring one or two very tiny things that I'm aware of, were complete idiot mistakes. So during this tournament, I twice forgot to name a battle tactic, and two separate times did slay the tyrant and then shot the model off the table. You have to kill it immediately.
oh no.
Um, yeah, and I also entirely forgot to charge with the unit one time. So those mistakes are huge, and I those are one of the things I need to correct, going forward. Like the fact that I jump into my turn too hastily. I need to be more like Yorin and stop and measure everything before I do my thing, because that'll give me time and I won't be making those sort of mistakes. It's like one of the big things, my big takeaways. But I do think I played other than that very, very well. I'm very proud of all my other plays. So yeah,
Excellent. And just to clarify with Yoren's stick apocalypse, as it were, he would do that before even naming his battle tactic, like right at the absolute beginning of his turn.
yes. I
That is
think part of the idea is to stop and give himself time to think during that time, while also being very precise with everything. Like just slow down, because once he knew what he was doing, he's going through. He knows that his whole plan for his turn. And he's like, "Grrr." So it's not like he's slow playing,
was that
because
usually the longest part of his turn?
yes, definitely. The rest of the turn would move very quickly. I mean, he's precise with his movements, but like he knew everything he was going to do by the time he started. By the time he moved the model, his whole turn was planned out.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really, really cool to see. Really impressive, and a really good habit that I would like to pick up in my own game.
So now that we've gone over all 8 grueling rounds, though it sounds like they were both a lot of fun and very mentally engaging, of the World Championships of Warhammer, what is next for you, both in army choice perhaps, and in where you're going next as far as your play?
So my next tournament I'm playing is Old Town Throwdown Teams, which is just the most fun, goofy event ever. Like, there's a lot of good players going, but it's an absolute blast. I cannot recommend that tournament highly enough. We all do themes and dress up in costumes, and there's videos, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm going that in 2 weeks. After that, it's just LVO, which is a pretty long way away, and I'm planning on playing Iron Jaws mostly going forward because I adore Iron Jaws. I find them super fun. They're not very good right now, but I just love them, and I love painting them, and they tickle my brain and my heart. So I'm gonna be playing Iron Jaws, and I'm not gonna get it, but I'm aiming to try and get Best Infection in 2 armies this year. It's not gonna happen probably, but unless I like win LVO with Iron Jaws, but
We'll
that
never
is my
say
goal.
never.
It's technically possible. Very unlikely, but I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna play a lot of Iron Jaws and paint them up, and I'm also gonna try and get best painted at Worlds with Iron Jaws, because I've spent about 200 hours painting my Iron Jaws army, and I'm still not done. And they are gorgeous, and I love painting them. I'll probably spend another 50 to 100 hours on them by the time LVO comes around, because it's very relaxing for me and very fulfilling. And then we'll see if I can win best painted and also perform well. That'll be dope.
That would be an amazing thing to see. So, Elias, where can people find you online? And do you have any shout outs you would like to give?
Yeah. So first of all, people can find me at Arongelion, Arongelion, on both Blue Sky and on Discord and on Instagram. My Twitter is Aaron_Newbom, I believe. and I am very responsive. I love to talk to people. Like if you have questions, hit me up. I will respond. Maybe not immediately, but as soon as I have time, I will. I love to teach people stuff, and so I've been doing, like I'm a very friendly and nice person, I promise. So if you have questions, you want to get better, just hit me up. Even just tag me. I'm on AOS Coach Discord all the time. You can tag me in Idneth or Iron Jaws, and I will answer any questions you have because those are the two armies I play a lot. Shoutouts. First of all, I want to shout out actually Matt Nguyen for just being the best soccer mom for all the SoCal people. Gets everyone
The news.
the news. Yeah, he gets everyone grouped together. He makes all the little social things happen. We all get out to dinner and stuff like that. I want to shout out Matt Rose for just being like the nicest, most authentic person. He would ask us questions about rulings and stuff like that, what we thought about it, and he was very interested in our answers and would like ask a lot of questions. He was just very like humble and approachable and really really nice, and it was awesome to experience that. And he's been doing great things with the game and really moving in an amazing direction. And he's just awesome. So I want to shout him out, and also Coach, of course. Anthony is awesome. He's really nice. He's a friendly, warm, hilarious person, and he does amazing things for the community. So,
He's our favorite Aussie for sure.
oh yeah. Also, War Glamour, let's go. Uh,
Hell yeah.
yeah, Team War Glamour.
You're
Anybody
shouting
who
me out on
shows up,
my own show.
yeah, anyone who shows up dripped up to tournaments, you can be an honorary member of War Glamour. And if
You
you play
must
40K, you can be
pass.
40 carat. Uh,
You
but
must
you
pass
have
a trial by drip.
trial by drip is the requirement. But yeah, come and talk to us at events if you see us.
The council is very lenient. All right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap it up. Thank you so much, Elias, for joining me this evening. And thank you, my lovely viewers, for stopping by to watch it as it's happening and give us some commentary in the background. So until next time, you beautiful people, be kind to yourselves and each other and stay
Bye bye
classy.
now.